I have for this hour, former trial and appellate lawyer, Dr. Tracy A. Pearson. Doctor, thank you so much for being with me tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
All right, so this is an interesting case because we've seen this before where defendants who have some sort of, they're on the autism spectrum, may have depression, some other things, perhaps on medication, it doesn't rise to the level of insanity that can take away the culpability, but it is an issue, and this judge decided it wouldn't be an issue in this case. Your thoughts on that?
I think that's a big mistake. I think that being willing to entertain a plea and do that colloquy with him, knowing that he wasn't taking medication, is setting this case up for a interesting set of turns. I would be personally uncomfortable accepting a plea from someone that I knew had deliberately not taken medication. I'd want to have information and insight from someone to know that they were doing it, freely, willingly, voluntarily, intelligently, and that medication wasn't impacting their ability to make a decision. I don't think what happened there today was sufficient.
You know what's interesting? This was a 11th hour plea deal. Jury selection was underway, basically. And as we both know, these negotiations go on right up until the start of trial. Sometimes during the trial, you can see a plea deal. So no surprise there that this is the way it worked out. My surprise is that prosecutors were willing to take a no contest plea to allow him to appeal. Your thoughts on that aspect of this case and why the prosecutors may have taken that route?
I think a conviction is a conviction is a conviction on the record. Ultimately, he's going to get to challenge those motion and limb decisions. How successful he'll be, who knows? But ultimately, they're going to get a conviction out of this, and without having to put folks through the ordeal of a trial. And anytime you can do that, that's good for prosecutors.
They also wanted to bring in, actually keep out a number of, the defense wanted to keep out a number of statements, and you heard Julia mention a few of those, keep them out of the trial, but the judge decided that those were going to come in. Very damning statements. Again, really not a chance, I think, here for him to get off on this, but again, appealable issues nonetheless. Now, some of these statements are, I wasn't sure I could kill anyone. I could have stabbed several people, but I wasn't sure they would die, so he decided to hit with a car instead. He talked about seeing dead bodies, and when he sees them, he gets hungry. Things along that line. Judge decided those were going to be a part of this trial. Your thoughts on if that might have been an error by the judge?
Without having the ability to challenge those, I think that it's possible. I mean, there are a lot of procedural, I don't want to say missteps. There are a lot of procedural irregularities here. You're right, absolutely. I've negotiated pleas right down to the 11th hour. But it is the issue of the medication. It's the issue of the statements. All of those things sort of jump out at me as something that it causes me concern. Anytime you sort of rush through something like this, it's bound to bounce back at you.
The justice system, Doctor, it deals with mental health in weird ways. I mean, many states deal with it one way, other states deal with it a different way. There's really no uniformity across the country. This is an issue clearly of mental health, but certainly it doesn't rise to the level of an insanity defense, let's say, where this kid can claim he didn't know what he was doing. As a matter of fact, what he was doing was what was giving him thrill. But the fact that he got a thrill out of it certainly suggests some mental problems. Do you think there's a deficiency there in the system in dealing with cases like this?
Absolutely. There are some states across the country where there is a mental health court, and that will address certain cases. But absolutely, mental health is not something that the criminal justice system is designed to address. It is designed to incarcerate people, to hold them, and then eventually, if permitted, to release them. And unfortunately, a lot slips through, and a lot doesn't happen as a result of that. So absolutely, I agree with you on that.
All right, let's talk about that sentencing hearing coming up tomorrow. There's a chance, as you heard Julia say, that the family of the defendant may speak. They're going to have a psychologist speak as well. All of those sound interesting. I think I understand why the psychologist. But do you think it's important to have the family testify? And would you let Pennell say something at this sentencing hearing?
You know, ultimately, whether the defendant wants to say something would be my client's decision. I've never stood in the way of that unless I believe that they're going to lie, in which case I do something else, and generally say, Your Honor, he'd like to talk to you, but to have the family have the opportunity to address the judge, I think that you know the criminal justice system is there for being heard. And certainly the family being heard, if the defendant wishes to be heard, he can do that, but he has to be able to appreciate the risks. And that is the concern here for me, is that I'm not so sure that he can appreciate the risks of what he's doing. I mean, who do you know that just willy-nilly pleads no contest to premeditated murder?
Absolutely, and the fact that he did what he did suggests that there's not a full connection there. So I think all those things certainly play towards what you're saying. All right, Dr. Pearson, stand by. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, investigators call the Justyn Pennell case a thrill-kill murder. So what exactly does that mean? And what kind of person commits that kind of crime? Well, a forensic criminologist joins us next to help us understand. And then later in our Talkback segment, Billy Ray Turner was found guilty of killing NBA star Lorenzen Wright. Do you think the jury got it right, that Turner was in fact the trigger man? Let us know what you think. We'll share some of your comments later on in the show. Keep it right here on Great TV.